As I groggily pushed away the covers, the first thing I noticed was the sound. It was a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to be coming from all around me. As I got out of bed and walked to the window, I saw them. The sky was filled with ships. They were huge metal ships that looked like they could crush anything in their path. And they were heading straight for the city. All I heard was the word 76. 76 repeated ad infinitum from what sounded to be loudspeakers. Then I awoke. The gray sky this morning covered the cityscape, laying an almost dreary atmosphere, chilly and barren, despite the lackluster bustle of city life being apparent below. I lazily made my way to the kitchen, yawning and stretching as I went, rubbing my sleepy eyes. Weird dream. Well, that was the least of my worries, seeing as I had bigger fish to fry, namely, finding a job. It had been months since I graduated from college with my business degree, and I was starting to get desperate. Business, they said. Ha, that was a good one because the only business I found was the ones that I paid, whether it was for food at a convenience store or my rent each month. Those were businesses, but my degree didn't do anything those businesses did. It was just a degree, a worthless piece of paper that said I knew things. What apparently, no one wanted to hire someone who knew things. You can know things, but if you don't have experience, then what good are you? The mere Republican landscape that sprawled before my humble apartment, barren, cold metal, and uninviting, ultimately reflected how I felt on the inside. Unemployed, broke, and hopeless. This has been my morning routine for the past few months now. Get up, try and find a job online or in the paper, eat something, and then go back to sleep out of boredom. That, and look at conspiracy theories online. That was my vice, my guilty pleasure. I like to think that there was more to the world than what we saw on the surface. That there were hidden agendas and secret organizations that controlled everything. It was a way to cope, I guess. If the world was just a big conspiracy, then that meant there was some sort of order to it. But if the world was just random, then that meant that my life was pointless. I mean, cool, right? Think about it. Jesus. Imagine if instead of being here because I was a worthless sack of shit, I was here because I was part of a grand design. That would be pretty sweet, right? But alas, it was just a coping mechanism. I'd been fortunate to save up enough money to last this long, but it was running out quickly. I like to think I was fairly good at budgeting. Anybody less so would have been on the streets by now. But even still, my savings were running out, and I needed to find a job soon. I headed to my computer, opened it up, and began the daily search for jobs. This job, that job, you get the picture. I surfed the web, trying to find anything that would be remotely interesting or even just a little bit helpful. Then I saw a job posting for a company called Eclipse. They were looking for somebody with a business degree, and it sounded interesting. Plus, the pay was good. I decided to apply. Eclipse was a company that dealt with, well, space. They were a research and development company that focuses on space travel and exploration. The job posting said they were looking for somebody to help with the business side of things, and that was exactly my expertise. I sent in my resume and crossed my fingers. As I sat there, bored out of my damn mind, I heard a knock on the door. I got up, wondering who it could be, and opened the door to find my childhood friend, Nathan. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, surprised to see him. "Just in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by," he said, walking into my apartment. "Man, it's been a while. How have you been?" "I've been all right," I lied. "Just graduate college and job hunting at the moment. Worthless is what I was." "That's great. What did you major in?" he asked. "Business," I replied. "You know, the one thing that's actually useful." Yeah, sure is, he said, although he didn't sound too convinced. Neither was I. We caught up for a bit, talking about old times and what we'd been up to lately. Nathan was doing well for himself, working as a software engineer for a big company. He was making good money and seemed to be happy with his life. I, on the other hand, was a pathetic mess. Unemployed, living off my savings, and with no prospects on the horizon. I felt like a failure until the call. "Hello, is this Mr. Rob Garcia?" The voice on the other end said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "Excellent. My name is Dr. Bardo and I'm the head of research and development here at Eclipse. We received your resume and were impressed with your qualifications." "Thank you," I said, my heart racing. "We'd like to offer you the position," the gruff and distant voice continued. "You'll be working with our team of researchers to help develop new space travel technologies." I barely heard the last part. I was too busy trying to process the fact that I had just landed a job. A real, actual job. After all this time, I had finally gotten lucky. "Hello, Mr. Rob Garcia," the voice on the other end said, snapping me back to reality. "Yes, sorry, that sounds great. I accept," I said eagerly. "Very well, we'll send you the details and paperwork. Welcome aboard," the voice said, but finished with a statement that set me in a frenzy. "The one caveat is that we need you to start today." "Today?" I said, incredulously. "Yes, is that a problem?" the voice replied. No, that's fine. I'll be there," I said quickly. "Very well. We'll see you soon," the voice said, before hanging up. I couldn't believe it. I had just landed a job, and it was starting today. I was going to be working for a company that dealt with space travel. This was huge. I quickly got ready and headed out the door, Nathan wishing me luck as I went. We walked down the metal stairs from my apartment, and as we did so, I looked back. The shabby pile of garbage I lived at definitely displayed my incompetence up until this point, probably why Nathan didn't seem all that convinced I was doing good as I had so fervently advocated. We split directions, with him promising to keep in touch. I took the subway to the address that was sent to me and walked into the building. I was greeted by a receptionist and escorted to Dr. Bardo Apas's office. As I walked in, I was surprised to see that the office was fairly small and unassuming. I guess I had expected something more glamorous, I guess. "Mr. Rob Garcia, so good of you to come," Dr. Bardo said, shaking my hand. He was an older gentleman, with graying hair and a thick mustache. He had an air of authority about him, but he also seemed kind and jovial. "Thank you for hiring me," I replied. "Oh, it was nothing. We just need someone to help us with the business side of things." "You have a very impressive resume," he said. "Thank you," I said again. I was starting to feel like a broken record. "Now, I'll let you get settled in. Your office is just down the hall. Angela, our receptionist, will show you the way," he said. I was shown to my office, which was small but comfortable. It had a desk, a computer, and a few plants. I sat down at the desk and began to look through the paperwork that was sent to me. There was a lot of it: contracts, non-disclosure agreements, and other legal mumbo-jumbos. I signed and initialed where I was supposed to and then logged into the computer. I'll admit, I didn't even read what they were putting out. There was no point. At this point, I would have prostituted myself at the corner in order to get by. I've never been that shameless, but money is money. There was an email from Dr. Bardo waiting for me. It contained a list of tasks that needed to be done and a few files that needed to be read. I got to work, and surprisingly, the work wasn't that difficult. I guess I had expected something more. Difficult, I guess. But it was just standard business stuff. I was creating reports, proposals, and presentations. It was all things that I had done before, but as the day went on, I started to notice something strange. The people who worked here were different. They were all very smart and seemed very kind at first, but there was something in the air that was slightly off. See, all of these people just didn't seem quite right. Really, that's the only way I can put it. Ever heard of the uncanny valley? It's this cool shit that basically says that the closer something is to being human, but not quite, the more it freaks us out. That's how these people felt, which was weird, because I couldn't see a single thing wrong with them, but they felt weird, like some kind of an eye or robot or an animal. I began noticing this when I was working on a report. I had to go to the information repository to research some things, and as I was walking through the building, I noticed a few people who were just staring, like they were in a trance or something. Eyes bleak, definitely not looking at anything in the room. The next thing that really unnerved me was the way these people maneuvered, I suppose. Whereas people usually have this kind of natural and easy movement, like water flowing downstream, these people were almost too perfect. Their movements were eerily fluid and precise, like they had been choreographed. That got me thinking, what if they were robots? I mean, it would make sense, right? A company that deals with space travel is bound to have some pretty advanced technology. And my conspiracy theorist brain was hard at work formulating all sorts of theories. Only after I settled back to my desk from grabbing the report out of the information repository was it that another very odd thought struck me. Why exactly did they hire me so quickly? I got the whole spiel about needing somebody to do my tasks, but these tasks seemed far too pointless. I was generating reports on things that hit dead ends, stuff that had been done before. A knock at the door of my cubicle startled me from my thoughts. I turned to see Angela, the receptionist, standing there with a stack of papers in her hand. "Mr. Rob Garcia, these are the reports you asked for," she said, and I noticed a red brim beneath her eyes as if she'd been crying. "Oh, thank you," I replied, taking the papers from her. She lingered there for a second as if watching me without replying, but then she just turned and walked away. I watched her go and then turned back to my computer screen. Suddenly, I felt a cold, piercing sensation on the back of my head, and my entire body froze. I couldn't avert my gaze from my screen, and I couldn't even blink. "Welcome, Mr. Rob Garcia," a voice said from behind me, and I felt somebody sit down in the chair next to me. "I'm sure you're wondering what's going on." My chair began to slowly turn around as I sat frozen as if stone. The only sensation of movement my body produced was my heart, racing and cold as fear settled into the pit of my stomach. The voice which spoke to me was nothing as if any human voice has ever been. Settling firmly into the uncanny valley, it was like the voice of a demon, or maybe even an angel, but definitely not human. "You see, Mr. Rob Garcia, we've selected you carefully for a very special task," the voice said, and finally, my chair turned around to face my captor. Shock hit my body, and for the first time, something about me moved. My insides heaved, and I felt the overwhelming urge to throw up at the sight before me. There sat Nathan, or his body at the very least, as I had known him. But his eyes were gone, almost as if they had been gouged out and replaced with a film, thin and opaque. His body, or skin, more precisely, was a deep, glossy black. It wasn't natural, but it also didn't look like any kind of paint or pigment that I had ever seen before. And his mouth was sewn shut with what looked like some sort of glowing thread. Well, both halves were sewn shut. What was perhaps the most shocking was that his skin was peeled back down the middle, as if he had been cut in half and then surgically. Gaping like a second mouth, I could see his insides, his organs still functioning as they pumped blood through his veins. And then I saw it, a fleshy, pulsating mass that was buried deep within his chest. It almost looked like a second heart. My body, still frozen, continued to heave, and finally, my mouth gave way. My jaw fell loosely open, and my last meal began to gurgle forth from my gaping mouth, splattering and dripping onto the floor below. My body, it seemed, had such a reaction to the fear I felt that it couldn't help but to try and rid itself of the poison. But even as my insides rebelled, my eyes remained glued to the horror before me. Do you know why we picked you, Mr. Rob Garcia? You're nothing special, and you have no skills that we require. We picked you because nobody would notice anything. Nobody knows that you're gone. Nobody's looking for you. You opened the door to an old friend you barely knew. You're desperate, jobless, and alone. And you're the perfect candidate for our position. The voice emanated from both sides of Nathan's mouth. His vocal cords split evenly down the middle, yet still seemingly capable of producing some form of vocal communication. My vision began to fade, and I could feel myself becoming lightheaded. I could still hear the uncanny voice speaking, though. We need to contact the leaders, Mr. Rob Garcia. The leaders of your people will take orders from a nobody like you. If we give you the right information, your people will comply. Aren't you happy, Mr. Rob Garcia? You wanted a job, didn't you? And now you have one. My eyes flicked shut. Darkness enveloped my mind inside my body.